Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys and the Sounds in Cinema podcast.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the Halloween edition. I am Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me on this last Halloween movie is, of course, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Hello, Tom.
You should know it's not wise to play Halloween pranks on me.
Fucking great.
I gotta say, Loomis is the antithesis of the monster we saw at the end of Halloween 5, using children for chum.
Yeah, right.
He's jolly, he's making wisecracks, he's wearing a sweater.
He's got a sweater and an awful nifty gray coat.
He's completely healed.
He traded up on the trench coat.
He bears none of the effects of either his
stabbing, his stroke, his heart attack, whatever happened last time.
Yes.
His getting thrown through windows, his burning. It's all fixed.
That fiery death he experienced several years ago seems to have no effect on him now.
Right.
So there we go.
There you have it.
Yet another plot development that could have been explained through finding out what happened in between this and Halloween 5. Which the movie patently refuses to tell us.
Correct.
Almost out of principle.
They refuse to tell us anything.
Well, yeah, except what we already know.
Yeah.
Like if you look at all the exposition at the beginning of this movie, such that it is, you'll see that it only covers facts that have already been established from previous movies.
Right, exactly.
With no sense of what we really want to know is, how did we get from the end of Halloween 5 to the beginning of this movie?
To here.
And this movie has literally no answers.
No. This is, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, a 1995 movie directed by Joe Chappelle, who's done Phantoms, The Skulls 2. But I'll give him this. He's done 6 episodes of The Wire.
I thought I recognized his name from
that's
great, isn't it?
Kudos on that, I say.
That's hard to
this movie,
it's hard
however,
to reconcile. Although I know he was under a tremendous amount of pressure. He was in an utterly impossible position as a director on this movie.
Completely impossible position, but I mean, we'll get into it as we go through the movie. I see a competency here that I did not see in the last movie.
Yeah. No, I don't agree.
In terms of shot selection, the way the movie's put, there are moments, and I'm not saying it's throughout the whole movie, but there are moments where I think to myself, okay, somebody knows what they're doing when they made that shot.
Okay. It's certainly watchable. Well, I think there are stylistic elements that are offensive in this movie.
Okay.
I don't know how much that has to do with it being a movie from the mid-90s, which is like a nadir of film taste in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't let him off the hook for that.
No. Well, and we'll get more specific later, but the critics might agree with you. This movie is the bottom of the barrel. 9% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay. 9%?
Yeah.
Okay, so last night I read the chapter on this movie from the book Taking Shape about the making of the Halloween movies.
Right.
This book came out in the last couple of years. It said 13%. So in the past year and a half, this has dropped from 13% to 9%. By the time you get this podcast, this will be at -7% tomato seed or whatever.
It's only getting worse.
I don't know what happens when you get into the negative percentages on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right. Well, it had a budget of $5 million, did have an opening weekend of $7.3 million. In the USA and the world, $15.1 million. So, you know, not the bottom of the barrel.
Well, Halloween 5 did much worse.
Yeah.
And
11.6 for
yeah,
Halloween 5.
And so the whole strategy behind taking a few years to develop this and kind of setting the bar really low was about avoiding all the pitfalls of Halloween 5, which had been made within a year of the previous movie and had tried to outdo the previous movie. There were literally production memos that speak to the fact that they wanted to set the bar as low as possible, so people could only be surprised by how good it was.
Well, how does one set about setting the bar low?
It's George Costanza the opposite. If Halloween 5 was released too quickly and was setting the bar too high and didn't succeed, in order to succeed we must set the bar low and take a long time to
But that's
make
what
it.
I'm saying. Are they just relying on Halloween 5 as setting the bar, or did they try to make the preview look shitty?
I don't think anyone was trying to make anything look shitty, but I will say that in terms of counterintuitive production decisions, it's worth noting that on this movie, the Weinsteins brought people over from Hellraiser Bloodline to fix the problems of this movie, itself a troubled production. So,
oh my goodness,
I'm not going to go
great.
as far as to say people involved in this movie were trying to make it look shitty, but I think bringing people over from Hellraiser Bloodline is as close as you get to that kind of intentionality.
Well, I do know this, that I don't know if this is how the subtitle came about, but I know that people in the production kept referring to, yeah, this is the curse of Michael Myers because this shoot sucks.
You know what? I think I may have talked some shit about this title before because, I thought it would be hilarious. But I gotta say, of the title,
of the latter Halloweens,
of the subtitles, this one kind of makes. I mean, this one kind of makes sense.
It makes the most sense.
I mean,
Well, that's not true. Halloween 4 makes the most sense.
Okay, but there is a curse here. Michael is specifically depicted as being cursed in the same way Danny's about to be cursed, which, I mean, that's got its own big bag of problems, but
right.
In terms of the title and the movie having some consonants, it's not bad. we're starting off with a degree of coherence that we'll
all right.
Never achieve again.
Well, what do we do? Let's start at the beginning.
I don't know.
So, I mean, one of my biggest problems is does this movie start with the voiceover, or does that come after the first kind of cold open?
So first of all, there's 5 minutes where there's no music
right
at the beginning of this movie. we start, according to my notes, we start with a flash montage of images that may be new, old, or just retconned to look old. And we're kind of thrown into Jamie giving birth as an an adult.
No, not as an adult. I mean, this is one of my big problems. The actor is clearly an adult. Jamie herself is supposed to be 15 years old.
Oh my God.
That's problematic. Because Paul Rudd has voiceover that says it's been 6 years since the events of Halloween 5, basically.
Yeah.
And she was, well, maybe she's 16, because she was either 9 or 10.
Don't give this movie credit, Mike. You know they fucked this up.
Yeah. At any rate.
And they also picked an actor who looks nothing like Danielle Harris.
Yeah, right.
Which is bizarre. Also the fact she couldn't possibly be Jamie in this timeline. It's not going well so far.
I have other notes for this beginning too. This is the first time we're having like a slam title card.
Yeah.
Which seems to fit Miramax more than it does Halloween.
Well, I have a lot of... Well, I mean, this is what was going on behind the scenes, because it was a constant battle between the Weinsteins on one side of the production and the Akkards, Malik and Mustafa, on the other, as to creative control over the direction of this movie. And the Akkards saw it, they wanted to emphasize its lineage in the franchise, and the Weinsteins wanted almost the opposite of that. So the fact, I think it's a miracle that you get any kind of
coherency at all.
Well, any kind of
what little of it there is.
But you have but basically in the middle of that you have a screenwriter who probably knew more about the franchise than any other screenwriter that's ever written for a Halloween sequel.
Wow.
Because he got hired on the basis that he turned up to an initial production meeting with a franchise Bible that he'd written himself. And he envisioned this being, one of the most literal entries in the franchise in terms of like picking up old story threads and speaking to the other movies in the franchise, and so it's kind of interesting that battle for the soul of the movie is very perhaps more compelling than the battle for Michael's soul, which also takes place in this movie.
Yes. Well, I also couldn't help but notice, because we just had our 100th episode. And of course, our adventures in sequeldom started with Little Boy Penis.
Yes.
And our first series,
Superman 2.
Our next,
for those of you.
Yeah. And our first series in the next 100 movies, this movie starts with Little Boy Penis too.
Oh, okay. But being used in...
It makes me nervous. I don't want to have to start putting in my Google search at 300, like, what other movies have Little Boy Penis?
The big difference here, though, is that Little Boy Penis was over-explaining. Little Boy Penis here is severely under-explained.
That's true.
The Little Boy Penis is just confusing issues. Like, for instance, who's the little boy?
Right. Let's start with that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's, it's important we note that this is the first Halloween sequel to take away the number.
Yeah.
Which we never get back.
Well, also, and we
Except
haven't talked
in the Rob
about
Zombies,
this.
But that's not.
We haven't talked about this. This is, I don't know if I know another series that switches from Roman numerals to numbers.
Right. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. It is. It's quite a back and forth. Yeah. And then after the also I have something to say about the credits.
Mm-hmm.
The attitude towards dispersing information in this movie is bizarre at best. So, first of all, the credit Mitchell Ryan as quote Dr. Wynn end quote is effectively telling us that Dr. Wynn
That he is
the secret baddie of the movie.
Or
at least he's not who he says he is.
Right.
Which is something that is a narrative twist in this movie. And yet there's a ton of information here that we need to know that the movie's not telling us. And yet it's telling us the very thing that we're not supposed to know until later in the movie.
That's amazing.
So I do not understand this how this movie works in terms of exposition. Given that once we get into the Paul Rudd, Tommy Doyle voiceover
Shenanigan Fest
that was originally written for Dr. Loomis, it tells us nothing except what we already know about Michael Myers. Going into this movie.
Right.
Oh. And I noted that it was a patently 90s sounding soundtrack that
oh yeah, I have those notes too.
That could be any other blockbuster. I mean, losing that Carpenter score really makes a huge difference. And then later doing like an electric guitar version of the score is also
it comes back,
crime.
But well, I mean, so this movie is an anomaly to me because it's a fucking mess.
Mm-hmm.
But utterly watchable.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
It's kind of crazy to me. And the ideas behind it, I mean, the idea that the choices they make no sense. They're telling us at the beginning that Michael Myers is sort of like a kept beast for the cult of Thorn, who just rapes 15-year-olds, even though that's not explicitly ever said in this version of the movie.
Correct.
And then, of course, by the end of the movie, it's like he cannot be kept and he just kills everybody.
Yeah. And
which is the Michael Myers we know.
Mm-hmm.
But how did they manage to even do it for so long? None of this makes sense. None of it. Nothing in this movie makes sense.
I don't really have much of a problem about Michael being part of the cult of Thorn.
Mm-hmm.
It's how ornamental it makes him feel.
Right.
Like you said, they keep him like a man beast. It feels more to me like he has a janitorial position within this cult. He's just kind of wandering the hallways, checking in, emptying the trash cans. It's really strange. And
do you have any recyclables?
And I realize part of it is I think there's so much evil in this movie for Michael to contend with that he's immediately eclipsed as a threat, as a villain. Because you have the Man in Black and the Cult of Thorn.
And the Cult of
Thorn. You have John Strode, who in his own way is the villain of the movie.
Oh, I'll say.
Barry Sims, who represents the evils of American media through the kind of shock jock.
Once again, I think we mentioned this in our ranking, but boy, does this movie ever announce it's in the mid-90s.
Right.
With that character.
So he kind of gets lost in the middle of that. And to speak to what you're also saying about, once they lose control of him, he seems to exclusively only kill the other bad guys in the movie. So he's
Right.
kind of it's a complete reversal where he becomes the hero because he's killing all the villains. All the people you're supposed to hate in the movie,
He does in.
yeah. So it's a strange use of Michael Myers.
Right.
Throughout
Yeah.
the movie, and that's, I think,
Well, and it's weird because the movie is bookended with these choices, but tries to kind of eliminate all that in the second act to have it just be a regular Halloween movie where he's in Haddonfield and killing people.
yeah, and I think a lot of that was Daniel Ferran's script went through 10 drafts before filming,
That
and was then
that makes sense.
large parts of it were rewritten during filming and post-production. So you can sort of see the remnants of a movie that is trying to return to the starting point of the series by having Tommy Doyle return from the original
Right,
movie,
exactly, yeah.
by putting the other members of the Strode family back in,
Back in the house, right.
and having that kind of continuity. But it all gets lost because his script was absolutely butchered from start to finish. And he wanted to do, also this movie recenters...
Was the Cult of Thorn shit, was that all in his original draft?
Well, that was, again, that was his knowledge of that was his knowledge of the franchise.
Right.
So
Was he picking up on that from the fifth movie?
He was picking up on the tattoo from the fifth movie,
Okay.
and the druid cult from Halloween 3. He wanted to merge both of those elements, bring those back into the 4. And he pretty much almost gets there. That's kind of exactly how it plays out. Also, the resurrection of the computer motif. A Cult of Thorn CD-ROM.
Yeah, right.
But apparently Ferran's actually wanted to go even further, and when they were watching TV in this movie, he wanted it to be Halloween 3 that they were watching.
Oh, wow.
So it would be like the mirror effect of Halloween 3 where they're watching Halloween. And that would have happened if the Weinsteins weren't cheap about licensing the rights from Universal Pictures, which they flatly refused to do. And they got like a public domain copy of Phantom of the Opera instead.
That's amazing.
So all those, I think that what you're talking about, that second act reversion to what we know of as Halloween, is like that base of the script kind of rearing itself almost.
Right. Well, because like you said, we start with Jamie giving birth to a child.
Right.
Apparently in this cult there's one good nurse who tries to let her escape.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when they're like, all right, Michael, go get her.
And this is another like narrative twist that they blow early on, because where else could this be but Smith's Grove?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone there is some kind of hospital worker. Even the guy who's smoking outside in his raincoat.
Rain slicker.
Right. It's like, aren't we supposed to be playing down the fact that this is some kind of a hospital? Because that would obviously mean it was Smith. Again, like the movie is like blowing its load when it comes to narrative twists. And yet we're in a perpetual state of confusion about what's actually happening and how we came to be here.
Yeah, there's just not really another way to look at it. It's funny to me that we're talking in terms of like how confusing and confused the movie is itself.
Yeah.
And yet I have so much affection for this movie. There's a lot of stuff that I like. I tell you what, why don't we take our first break and then let's come back and we'll dive deeper into Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. Sound good?
Sure, yeah. I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beers. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, the Joe Chappelle film. All right, Tom, where do we go from here? I mean, there's sort of an elephant in the room that you and I have previously discussed.
Which is?
Do we bring up the fact that there are two versions of this movie, or do you want to save that for later?
Let's talk about. Should we talk about that at the end and see what we think about the theatrical version?
Okay.
Because I think it's all going to be comparative.
That's true.
And I don't want to give away too much of how I feel about either version at this
all right.
point.
In our theatrical released version, Jamie,
yes.
of course, escapes and she gets to a bus depot and then she fakes Michael out. And
I have nothing but questions.
I know.
About this bus station.
There's so many questions.
I don't think there's a scene in a movie I understand less than that bus station scene.
In terms of why there's no people there, is there not someone working? Is there like why is it abandoned? Those are my questions.
How does why is there nobody there?
Somebody explain it to me.
Why? How did a baby
not cry?
Yeah, it's been in. So the baby was put in the bathroom at night.
The baby's there for at least 12 hours.
The next time we go there, it's during the day, and Tommy Doyle is the first person
apparently to go into that bathroom.
There's a newborn baby in, and this is, how far did she travel with the baby? There's so many questions.
Well, and why do you even stop
at the bus station?
Right.
I guess she thought she didn't.
Maybe you think you're going to get on a bus, but when you walk in and the whole place is dark, get back in your truck and fucking drive.
Didn't the pickup truck break down? Please tell me that at least the pickup truck broke down.
I don't think so, because she gets back in it and drives. He catches up with her at the farm.
At the
farm that apparently nobody lives at.
Farm.
Because
is this the farm from Halloween 4? Finally,
well, no,
from the opening of Halloween 4.
Oh, I thought you were mistaking for Halloween 5.
Well, there's a farm in there too. There's a pumpkin patch there's two pumpkin patch that don't really come into play,
right?
And now one which I guess is important because at least in this version of the movie, Jamie dies there. In exactly the same way that someone died in a pumpkin patch in Halloween 5. And at least in this version of the movie, we get two impaling deaths back to back.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So it's very odd, and I think the gruesome graphic violence that the Weinstein specifically were pushing for
Mm-hmm.
in this sequence, which was a reshoot,
Yes.
because in the producer's cut she dies in an entirely different way. You can really see it come out that's the effect that they're going for here.
Absolutely.
I think. And then later deaths will also be kind of refigured so that they're more gory and exploitative.
Yeah, the gore and the boobs are back.
Yeah, because I mean, it's really hard when you're watching movies produced by the Weinsteins not to read in the rapiness.
Right.
But like at an early point in this movie, we see Kara,
Mm-hmm.
who's kind of our new protagonist. I know I'm not gonna.
The movie's a
I'm
little
not
confused on protagonists.
I'm not gonna set up my stall on that
Yeah,
one right now. Looking at herself half naked in the mirror in lingerie, and then Paul Rudd as Tommy Doyle is watching her through a
spying.
camera as like the button to the scene.
Yeah.
You've already said that at least we assume that Michael is now a paedophile rapist.
Right.
Although in this version of the movie, that's never said either way. It's hard not to feel like the Weinstein
Weinstein's
fingerprint.
paws are on this fucking movie.
Given that no other Halloween movies have anything in this kind of this sexual predator
Right.
kind of sphere.
You just
that this
imagine
movie has
somewhere in a room
those
Harvey
three
Weinstein
things.
was saying, what Tommy should do is be watching her in her underwear.
Right. It feels like Alan Ball was watching, for his script to American Beauty, because it's exactly the same
right.
thing. And we've got Paul Rudd, his debut,
his
as announced in the credits, starring and introducing Paul,
Right.
which is kind of undermining the starring bit, don't you think? Starring this total greenhorn, Paul Stephen Rudd.
starring, and if he sucks, introducing Paul Rudd.
Exactly. And I gotta say, I think, for want of any other reason that I can think of, I think he might be behind why this movie's so watchable.
Yeah.
Because he's very...
He's
got a hell of a lot of charisma, even as a creepy dude.
He has a ton of charisma, even as a creepy dude, and despite the fact that he has a handful of strange moments. And I can't figure out if it's a strange acting choice or if somebody made him make that choice.
You know what? Even at this early age in his career, I think he's figured out that he has no choice but to play all the choices.
Yeah, right.
And that shows to me that a mature understanding of the kind of movie he's in his first movie.
Oh, I'd like to think that. That would make me happy.
Which is, why he's never really been drawn on this movie before. Like, it's not something that he's ever asked about.
Yeah, right.
And he talks about, which is, I think he has a lot of affection for it, actually, from the little he said. But I just see him, and part of this is obviously because his part was reshot to death. Mm-hmm. But you see him, you sort of see him play scenes, especially the later scene he has with Michael Myers. It's clear no one's told him what this is supposed to mean, or even maybe where
what
it comes
is actually
in the script.
happening.
What is actually happening? So he's just playing all the choices, and good because he's a
he's a pro. He's going to give them choices in the editing room.
And it feels like it's reasons like that. That's why he's still around today in cinema. I think. And some of the other people in this movie are maybe not.
That's funny. Well, I think it's right about this time that we finally see Dr. Samuel Loomis.
Yes.
Donald Pleasance is
talking
back.
to the radio.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking back to the radio. Yeah, and I've already said it all. It's crazy. I want to know what's happened in these past few years.
Because apparently it's a lot.
It's an entirely different human.
Right. He seems to his heart attack seems to have calmed him down.
Well, I guess you survive death twice, minimally.
I was going to say,
Maybe that really
I think you're
changes you.
undercutting the number of times he survives death.
Maybe
This guy is
you know,
stabbed, burned, thrown through a window, has a heart attack. I mean, come on.
Maybe, you know, I guess if I'd been dead that many times, I would have a renewed appreciation for life.
You could probably go for the surprise ending. Samuel Loomis is Michael Myers. He can't die.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's a nice send off, but I guess it's nice to see him having fun, especially in like such a surreal movie as this.
Mm-hmm.
He you know, if ever there was a time to just sort of have a bit of fun, it's now.
And he's not the same manic Dr. Loomis. He's kind of comatose as he's walking through the town.
The actor himself is very close to death.
Is,
I mean,
yes.
we can't.
I mean, he died. Shortly after.
You can't
this movie.
sort of understate that.
But the whole movie and the character himself has that feeling. But I'm not sure that the movie suffers for it. What do you?
No,
I don't.
No,
okay.
Not at all. I mean, it had gotten so ridiculous.
Right.
Because Halloween 5, instead of like pulling back from the end of Halloween 4 where he pulls a gun on a child, decides to double down and play the entire movie like a man who would happily pull a gun on
everybody
at any given moment. Right. So I like the fact that for whatever reason, and we'll never know, he's found some zen in his life.
He's centered.
So I like that, and I like that they're leaning into the more sort of comic pantomime aspects of the character, like again doubling down on him jump scaring into shot every time he appears, to a ridiculous degree. A ridiculous and hilarious degree. It's really funny. There's a movie in the early 80s which was an anthology compilation of horror movie clips called Terror in the Aisles. Yeah. You know Terror, yeah. And the framing narrative is like is the theater audience.
As a matter of fact, sorry to interrupt.
No.
The Halloween 4 Blu-ray disc has that entire movie, and that movie has Donald Pleasance as a narrator.
No, I was going to say, so he's one of the many horror movie stars who pop up.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same shtick of he's surprising everyone in the audience, kind of jump scaring into shot. So I like to think of this is Terror in the Aisles, Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, exactly.
Playing Loomis. Right. That's that's how I rationalize it.
That's great. Well, then we have to meet the Strodes after this.
Boy, do we meet those Strodes.
Should we give any play to, like,
Danny?
Before we meet the Strodes, when we find Dr. Loomis, we also do meet Dr. Wynn.
Well, this is interesting.
I mean, is it just me, or the second you have an actor like Mitchell Ryan show up, don't you say to yourself, "Oh, he's the fucking Man in Black, that guy"?
Yeah, if his credits in the titles didn't give it away,
right?
The casting of a big star in this seemingly unimportant role gives it away.
Sam, I want you to come back to Smith's Grove. I love that, like, Loomis looks like he's on death's door. The last Dr. Pataki that we knew was like, get the fuck out of my life forever. And this guy's like, Sam, we need you.
It's so interesting because as anyone listening to this anyone who's listened to a lot of this podcast will know, I have a habit of mistaking actors from sequels.
I'll say.
Specifically characters from sequels as people who were in the original and are now returning. I've sort of become so jaded with that, I assumed that Dr. Wynn, this is his first appearance. No, he's in Halloween! There is a scene with Dr. Wynn in Halloween. He's like a bit part character in that movie. And that's what Daniel Farrands was like, well, who could the Man in Black be? This guy makes as much sense as anything else.
Wow, not even I remembered that.
No, I mean, he is in literally like half a scene, quarter of a scene.
But it's not Mitchell Ryan, is it?
No, it's not
Okay.
Mitchell Ryan, no. I know, it's still ridiculous that we're supposed to, but that we're supposed to invest so much in this character that we really just met now.
Right.
As, you know, for him to be, like, you know, it's not a 10-minute Scooby-Doo episode, you know, where you meet
Right.
you meet the fairground owner at the beginning, and then at the end you're surprised because the fairground owner is the monster. It's like it's a 2-hour movie like a 1.5-hour movie in which he barely appears, and we're all supposed to be flabbergasted when it turns out to be him. Whereas, you know, it doesn't really make sense that the Man in Black predates the character of Dr. Wynn. I don't think you can pull that.
That's
trick
amazing.
On the audience,
That's
right?
great.
If the mystery version of the character lasts longer than the actual character. Yeah. Even Minnie Blankenship is a character who's from a previous movie.
What?
She's talked about in Halloween 3. She's who Harry Grimbridge is going to meet.
Wow.
Before he died.
All right, let's move on. I want to talk about this Strode family.
Yeah, the
Tell
Strode
me
family.
your thoughts and feelings.
Well, this
on
is a
the
darker
Strodes.
version of American Family Life than we've seen before.
Yes.
It made me think that we don't really need a serial killer in this movie,
Right.
to get a genuine psychopath in the form of John Strode.
I gotta tell
The
you though,
worst-
like the absolute worst person, worst character. But I really like the acting from like both him and
Yes.
Mom. Like they're
He's
great.
He's very committed.
Oh man, he even has moments of. He has moments of when he's gonna call her son a little bastard. He has a moment of pause, like, this
Yeah.
is something I shouldn't say. And then he looks at the child and he goes, that little bastard of yours. Kind of like, he kind of just pushes it through his teeth because he can't help himself because he's that big a piece of shit. It's wonderful piece of acting to me. I love it.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, there's a few things in this movie that are, like, unfortunate foreshadows of later Halloween sequels. And I think Rob Zombie liked this idea that the Strode family are a piece of shit. And that it's fine here because it has no connection.
Yeah, that's
to
what he gleaned onto.
Yeah, he did. He gleaned onto that as the reason why Michael would be so fucked up. But it's good. It kind of works here because it's a change of pace from, you know, benign but negligent parenting to actively abusive parenting.
Yeah.
But again, I think the biggest problem is it sort of dilutes the evil once more.
Right.
Evil is in literally everywhere in this movie apart from in Michael Myers.
That's great.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's, I think a lot of finessing, this could have been a really interesting way to go with the storyline, but not enough of this idea of how the family are in this house and do not know major parts of their own family's history that happened in this house, except John.
Except for him.
Makes literally no sense. I can't get past that. I think with finessing, this is a great idea of a new but familiar family to focus on.
Yeah, no, I do too.
It works really well, but I think they fudge it like everything else in this movie.
Okay, right.
The big fudge is that only John knows, and that none of them have.
They have no clue
There's literally so many ways
that
they
they could
found
know,
out.
right?
Yeah, the neighbors coming over and go, oh, by the way, that's the serial killer
we
house.
meet them.
You remember your own family history, right?
We meet them by the children sitting behind trash cans as he's chopping down a Michael Myers sign that's been planted in his own lawn.
Yeah.
Like, this might bring up questions. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
Or like
and then
you
I
said,
think
the neighbors might say, hey, pretty brave of you to go into this house.
Right. Yeah. So it's problematic, but yeah, it definitely I think it gives you that what it does do that's really successful. These are all qualified statements. It gives you that fuzzy feeling you want from a Halloween. Because you get to go back to the Myers house, you get to see the Halloween decorations, you get to do the Halloween Hadfield Halloween subtitle.
Right.
So just by following this family for a little bit, you kind of get that pumpkin spice Halloween feel that you want from these movies, and that certain producers on this movies wanted far more of than they got. So I'm grateful for that.
All right. Yeah.
And I'm also grateful that it takes a little bit of a darker turn. I just think it's so he's so ridiculously unsympathetic and entirely dysfunctional that it compromises the other villain in the movie.
But it gives you a cheering moment when his head explodes.
Yeah, which is again like
Uber violent
body horror that of a level we haven't seen in this franchise
right.
so far.
Well, and this is also about the time we're kind of introducing this idea of Haddonfield not participating in Halloween.
Which is weird, was foreshadowed in Halloween 5.
Yeah.
When, is it Tina who said they should ban Halloween in this town?
Mm-hmm.
Or Rachel? One of them said that.
Yeah.
At one point. And obviously, obviously the Halloween screenwriters were like, that's a really good idea.
Let's do it.
Yeah. What's the obsession with mid-90s movies and overlighting the foreground?
I don't know.
I don't need to see the dust in the air.
Right.
I tell you, I've been on a 1995 kick recently.
Well, we watched Desperado recently.
That's true. And GoldenEye and Get Shorty and Crimson Tide. And I tried watching The Usual Suspects, which a movie I've always enjoyed, and I actually found it unwatchable this time, precisely because the foreground was so overlit.
It's not
Kevin
Spacey.
That too, and the fact that the best part of the movie is the twist, and if you know the twist, it's kind of been diminishing returns for a rewatch. I just thought, and then I watched this and thought, oh, this is obviously a problem stylistically at the
Interesting.
time.
Something that was happening in all the film schools. This is what you got to do.
Yeah, because you get that kind of dust in the air effect, which is cool but pointless and distracting. So it's counterproductive to me.
Well, we also, what'd you think of Mom's death?
She gets
axed.
She gets washed, doesn't she? No, her clothes
Her
get
clothes
washed.
get washed, but she gets axed.
Right.
This is one of those moments where I see good filmmaking, where she sees him, drops the basket of clothes she has, she goes down the steps, and she's, another big thing in horror movies. Everybody's always drying their sheets outside on clotheslines, as opposed to the dryer that's in the actual basement of their house. But okay.
Yes.
All
yeah.
horror movies have a clothesline outside, but
that's interesting.
But of course, crafty Michael
pretty
Myers
shitty,
could predict where
pretty
she was
shitty
going to crawl
machine,
to, and was behind a sheet, ready with the axe.
This is something they do logistically explain, because that the washer and the dryer are pieces of
That's
shit.
true.
Because of John Strode. Because he's let
the
that
real
happen
monster
to his
of
family.
this movie.
Yes, he
really
is the
is.
real monster. Loomis is a good guy now, so you can't go to him. Dr. Wynn is very polite,
Until he isn't.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. But that's good. I mean, we are getting into the more Halloween-ish part of this movie.
We are, and I think we've semi-neglected to talk about the fact that the real framing narrative for this movie is a radio call-in show. Followed by a live outdoor broadcast of the Barry Sims show, the shock jock in question, from Haddonfield on Halloween. That's really as close to a driving force as this movie's narrative gets.
Yeah.
And as you've alluded to, historically, it's very interesting because in this movie in the mid-90s, you have both radio and the beginnings of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see Tommy Doyle on the internet on a website that has information about Michael Myers on it. And yet this movie is so locked in mid-90s thinking
that there are impressions of Beavis and Butthead.
It couldn't predict that internet would make radio obsolete.
That's great.
That literally one would eclipse the other to the point where Howard Stern is now an internet personality, not a radio personality. And I just think that's like a fascinating time capsule of how we thought about the internet in the beginning versus how it is now. But Halloween Resurrection will rectify that mistake.
Yeah, it will, in a big way. We're going to have to wait a while, though, Tom. Let's take another break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up talking about Halloween, the Curse of Michael Myers. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
stay on target
and check out the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
stay on target.
Find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
stay on target.
That's the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. And we are back once again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here finishing up the 9%. Dropping from 13%. Halloween, the Curse.
Sometime in the past year.
Michael Myers.
20. I think COVID just killed any appreciation for this movie.
That's funny. So, I mean, we got a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Narratively, in the theatrical release, there's just so much nonsense that happens at the end of this movie.
Right.
And then, of course, we need to kind of talk about this producer's cut.
Right.
And what a fucking wrench that throws in this story and sort of the legacy of this movie within the series itself.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Because as you were saying, within this story... what's her name? Kara.
Jamie? No.
Kara Strode. Her brother?
Yes.
Who's her brother?
Oh.
John? Is it John? Bradford English? and his girlfriend, because they're going to the park.
Tim Strode.
Tim Strode. That's right.
Bradford English is
The son?
John Strode, named after John Carpenter, and his wife is Deborah,
Right.
named after Deborah Hill.
Well, so they're gonna go to the Shock Jocks show. This is,
Yeah.
of course, where he learns that, like, where he's living in that moment. Just
And by the way, they're part of some pro Halloween protest movement.
yes,
That wants to use the celebrity of Barry Sims,
Barry Sims,
who we all know and is not Howard Stern, to draw attention to their cause.
and it's funny too because
This is such an interesting subplot.
Yeah.
I'd love this
you
to
have
get more
another
play.
kind of half evil character who's not evil; he's just a dick,
Barry Sims.
right?
Yeah.
And
He represents the evil of modern media.
And of course, he has to die.
Yeah, he gets a
gets-
crucifixion death.
He gets strung up.
He dies like Jesus. on like
Bleeding on
strung
a
up on a
child.
tree. Oh, bleeding on a child, and the tone of that death is really difficult for me to read because of the fairy lights and the multicolored boxer shorts. Like,
Right.
you know, how Wile E. Coyote is this? Versus,
raining,
are we
Mommy.
supposed to be shocked?
It's raining
Are we
red.
supposed to laugh?
It's red,
And he's
Mommy.
a ostensibly comic character as well, which
Yeah,
complicates things
further.
further. But I did, looking at it in the holistically in the series, it seems to have resurrected that deleted subplot from Halloween 2, which was Michael killing the news crew
Okay.
to find his way to the hospital. It seems to be like, I think that was probably Daniel
A connection.
Ferran's, yeah, sort of picking up that thread.
Okay.
I mean, aside from its historical short-sightedness, I think it's a decent, like, I weirdly find it some of the most compelling parts of the movie.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because me too. His death is actually
It's
quite
satirically
compelling. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Satirically, it makes more sense than anything else than anything else does in this movie, because you're sort of like, yeah, I guess I could imagine a Howard Stern style shock jock, like trying to exploit a horrific media event like this.
Yeah, and it's only because he.
Geraldo did this thing every week.
Yeah.
Geraldo did that kind of like profiting off misery every week, and Jerry Springer and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I also think it's funny that Barry Sims, his death came about because he just mistook one truck for another truck.
Right.
He got into Michael Myers' killing van.
And apparently he's on the phone complaining to his producer Paul
Yeah.
about them not going straight to the Myers house, and that was an in joke from the screenwriter who pushed for the movie, for that sequence to be at the Myers house,
That's funny.
and the producer Paul Freeman would not let him. So he wrote in that scene as a fuck you, and seemingly nobody was bothered about that. They were just bothered by everything else he did.
Wow.
Like, the actual thing that was meant to piss off the producers did not piss off the producers, but him putting in quality storytelling that felt like Halloween was a big problem for them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, they finally do get back home, but meanwhile, Mom and her son, Kara and her son, have gotten out of the house, and they're with Tommy now. And her brother comes home.
Mrs. Blankenship's boarding house.
Yeah, right. Amazing.
And her name is a callback to Halloween 3, but also the imagery around her. She's like that old lady in the rocking chair that we see in Halloween 3. And she's a member of the Cult of Thorn, which is based on the Druid cult from Halloween 3. So she ticks all those boxes. And again, it's supposed to be a huge deal that she turns out to be a villain
But you
and
could
we really have just met her. I mean, I know we've just met Mr. Wynn, but just Dr. Wynn, but we really just met Mrs. Blankenship, and we know literally nothing about her other than she's a bit vacant.
Yeah. Well,
So why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she be a
her
villain?
inability
is the
to
question.
hear and her sort of vacant stare because she's part deaf. That's the only thing they introduce for that character early on.
Yeah, that's right.
Is the only thing that's supposed to make us think she can't possibly be evil.
See, this would have been a good place to have a robot. If she turned out to be a robot, that would work better than it does
in Halloween 3.
Halloween 3.
That's great.
I would believe her as a robot better than I believe those Kraftwerk guys.
That's
are
amazing.
robots.
Love it.
Well,
the brother and the girlfriend get it.
that's right. Yeah. And
Michael even hands him a towel.
And yeah, it's
But, and I mean, I think we're gonna save the producer's cut for a minute. But did you notice the difference in cuts between his death in the producer's cut and this cut? Where this one, it's like they took the frame and then zoomed in on it and then put it in slow motion.
Right.
In a way
like a pirated movie.
Yeah, exactly. In a way that's unappealing. I was just gonna say, in a way that's so unappealing, it looks as though it was stolen material. Like they.
I think I saw a pirated video of Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country that looked a lot like that.
Now, what's the deal? What's the deal with the boy? He's supposed to become the next Michael Myers.
Right. He's getting cursed.
He's getting cursed. Is that why he's just inexplicably drawn to going across the street for no reason whatsoever?
An even bigger question. Does this mean Michael is entirely absolved of blame?
Right, yeah.
If Danny is what Michael was, does that mean he's a totally innocent victim and we have no choice but to forgive him for all
he was
done?
Beset with a curse,
right.
Your Honor.
And later on in this movie, he makes up for it by killing a lot of very bad people.
Right. Yeah, he killed a lot of people, Your Honor, but at the end there, he was killing villains.
Right.
I would like to see the court case that results from this movie.
Well, you might. Hint, hint. Stay tuned, everyone.
Oh, fuck. Oh.
So yeah, those are my big takeaways. At this point in the theatrical cut, it's clear that this cut of the movie has lost track of Loomis's movement.
Yeah. Lost
where
track
he
of
is,
everything.
where he's been, where he's going.
I mean,
it's entirely unclear.
He meets Tommy at the bus station. We didn't give that a lot of play, but he's like, meet me at the party later. And then they find each other when it's raining blood.
Also, did you have any issue with... Well, I had a couple of like continuity issues.
Oh, yeah.
When more than a couple, obviously, but specifically about people's relationship to Dr. Loomis. So when Jamie like when she's on the phone to Barry Sims,
of course,
radio call-in show, she cries for Dr. Loomis's help.
Yeah, please help me.
Right, this is the guy who, let's not forget, a few years ago was using
pointing
her
a gun
as
at her and then using
human
her as bait
in front of Michael, turned a gun on her the year before. Not the first person I'd be calling out to help them. And then when Tommy recognizes him in the hospital, like, I know this was a big night in Tommy's life and he's never been able to get over it, but did he see Loomis well enough to recognize him?
He never saw Loomis.
He never saw Loomis, right?
No.
At best we can.
He runs out the front door
he saw
screaming,
part of his...
and he's down the street. He like hears the screaming, and he's like, "What's that?" They never met.
saw it in
Now,
you know.
maybe Tommy saw a newspaper or something. Is all I get. Like,
I guess
he has been studying the case. I'll give him that, and he's got lots of newspaper articles up. So I'll give him.
But
that
they
he can
act as if-
recognize him.
But that's not how he introduces himself. He introduces him as, "You saw me that night."
Right.
And Loomis is like, "Oh, Tommy
Doyle!"
It's one of those moments where, again, I think like what would have been a really nice point of continuity
Mm-hmm.
that would like put the whole series in perspective is fudged by execution.
Yeah. Well, and there's a real, like, narratively, it doesn't make any sense because there's a pretty good scene when Kara has to go back over to the Strode house and get her boy. I like all of that when she like.
Oh yeah, it's like good haunted house.
Yeah, it's good haunted
stuff.
house stuff.
And she finds the body, and
She
it's
finds
very
the bodies.
suspenseful.
She, even though she witnessed the murders, she's like,
He keeps coming.
and suddenly Michael appears and.
Well, she heard it over the phone, right?
No, well,
did she?
she was on the phone with the girlfriend and then looking through Tommy's peep.
Oh, that's right. She rear windowed it.
Right.
Wow.
But all of that is
I
really
agree.
effective.
That's very successful.
And totally successful, but then it's compounded with their getting across the street. Tommy is finally back with Loomis. We have the reveal of what's her name? Mrs. what?
Blankenship.
Blankenship, thank you.
She's just called Mrs. B.
Okay. So now she's evil. And for reasons I can't fathom, Kara decides to throw herself out a window.
Oh, that's right.
Now, the end result of that is
Maybe the actress just did, and they went with
she's
it.
like, I want out of this movie.
I want out
like,
of this
fucking-
fucking movie.
Does a nosedive. The end result of this is hard cut to Loomis and Tommy standing outside on the grass, but like next to the shattered glass. I feel drugged. We were drugged. They've been kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
This is an astonishing amount. You really have to suspend disbelief.
And we've got part of the Dr. Wynn reveal at this point, right?
Yes, he showed up in the house. He's like, "Hello, I'm the bad guy."
And just, not that it really matters, but if you want to dig deeper, there's a whole heap of reason why he could never be the Man in Black. From watching the last two movies.
Right.
It's like, there's sartorial reasons, there's logistical reasons, the timeline doesn't work at all. He's in places as the Man in Black that he's also in as Dr. Wynn and simultaneously. Right. It's not... But we knew that the Man in Black was a sub MacGuffin.
Right.
It was a MacGuffin that didn't take the plot anywhere.
That nobody was chasing or looking for.
Yeah, it was a MacGuffin. It was the crime dog of MacGuffins.
But I literally cannot think of a narrative reason not to kill Loomis, kill Tommy, and kill Kara. They only need
in the
four.
Theatrical version, yes, it sort of makes sense in the producer's cut.
Right.
But well,
it's,
I don't know. Maybe
Loomis
it makes
says is it's his game now. We have to go to him.
Maybe it makes more sense in the theatrical version because I literally don't know what his plan ever was.
Right. True.
So if we don't know what, it's like a Schrodinger's cat situation. If we don't know what his plan was, how do we know that this wasn't part of his plan? And this, I mean, do you want to start talking about the producer's cut now?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of we really must
really set in.
Yeah, because until the end, a lot of it is just. I think I referenced this in our ranking episode. every time I'd ever watched this movie until I watched the producer's cut, I had made giant assumptions that the movie never gives me. That the movie never actually narratively tells me. And then I watched the producer's cut, and I was gleeful because I'm like, okay, I've been right all along.
But is that better or worse is my big question.
Right.
Because I realize...
It's more satisfying to me. Even just to hear Loomis say, yes,
more
like
satisfying.
state-of-the-art surgery.
He says that in both versions. He says that in both versions. I have that in my notes here.
No.
Yeah, he does. He talks about plastic surgery in both versions. I hate to tell you.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm totally sure. Because I remember you saying that. But regardless, I know exactly what you mean. But, so, for like 75% of the movie, when I watched the producer's cut, I could see that this cut of the movie was making storytelling and editing decisions that were more sober, saner, cleaner. But what it made me realize was it's not just the style of this movie that I'm not okay with. It's the content. Because... So, in the book Taking Shape, they kind of and ah about which version is better, but they make the point that there's a blissful ignorance to be had in not knowing that Michael is definitively a paedophile rapist. And that's the theatrical version, where you don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
Like, and I wouldn't go that far, because I think it is something you need to pin down if you're going to have it in your movie. Even, you know, so, but I do definitely think that, you know, you said it's satisfying, but it's more disturbing when that is confirmed.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So
it's still batshit crazy as a story.
Right. So for like 75% of the movie, it didn't really impact how I felt about the movie. Like the issues
Actually,
I had
I'll go
were
along with you on that. I mean,
as much about content as
I
style.
found it satisfying just that all the curiosities I had and all the questions I had. It was nice to know that I was right all along, but it was also interesting for me to know that apparently that first movie gave me enough to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the story behind...
So until you get to the end, where it changes vastly...
Well, yeah, but how we got to this point, that there was even a producer's cut, it's not really... It seems like, oh, there was the theatrical release, and then the producer's cut came afterwards. That's not how it went. There were two rival cuts being made as they were filming. And it was two warring camps, the Akkads on one side, who are behind the producer's cut, and the Weinsteins on the other, who are behind the theatrical version, with with the director and screenwriter in the middle. So what you have is two different competing ideas of the same movie. And that's really how it plays out. But as you said, the biggest difference is the final Smithsgrove denouement is apples and oranges, chalk and cheese. And this is, to me, where the producer's cut succeeds, where the theatrical version doesn't.
I agree completely.
And there are two major crimes for me that the theatrical version makes.
Go ahead.
Crime number one. Taking what is an entirely coherent sequence of filmmaking and turning it into one of the most utterly incomprehensible pieces of cinema.
Well, that leads me to this question: which part? Because it's
you see, I can't. I'm trying to put myself in the position of someone who would prefer.
I assume you're talking about when they actually get the baby.
So basically, you've got Laboratory.
Yeah.
Versus Temple of Doom.
Right.
Producer's cut is Temple of Doom. something science-y. Science versus magic.
Yeah.
Ideally, you want a little bit of both, but they've split the two. And I can see why you would think that the Temple of Doom version is hokey and old hat and like a Scooby-Doo episode. Like, I can see someone looking at that going, that's the best you can come up with. However, it makes independent sense.
Mm-hmm.
It takes the story, it takes the elements of the story and has a denouement based on that story that, justifies its own existence. And then in the theatrical version, we have a laboratory where something's going on. Right?
Something.
That involves
yes.
syringes, green blood, and stillborn babies.
Right.
In some kind of arrangement that is never clarified.
Well, and it's...
And that's all we know.
Yeah.
Like, because we've seen Temple of Doom and probably young Sherlock Holmes as well, we know what the Temple of Doom ending is all about. It's a sacrifice.
Right.
Om Shiba,
Yeah.
It's like, it's clear because we know the...
Nom Shiba.
We know the storytelling and genre conventions and reference point for that. For the laboratory, it's like, well, it seems kind of science-y.
Right.
But, like, I don't know what's happening.
It appears that Michael's there to do another rape. At the behest
In
of a
which version?
Weinstein.
In which version?
In the theatrical.
In the theatrical version.
And then he goes nuts instead and kills everybody.
Right.
For no reason. Like, but that's also unexplained.
Bear in mind, this
had
is
him
only
under control until they didn't.
This is only crime number 1.
Right. I really
Crime
wanted
number
one
2.
person to say, Michael, what are you doing?
Yeah. Crime number 2.
Go ahead.
And the bigger crime, from my perspective.
All right.
This is the last remaining footage of Donald Pleasance.
Yeah.
And the theatrical version decided to leave some Loomis footage on the cutting room floor.
But include his last shot in voiceover.
Right.
Unexplained.
Yeah. Yeah, so they didn't have an ending to replace what they had with, but they still refused to use the ending that had been filmed, that is the last remaining footage of an actor who died.
Shortly after the movie ended.
Shortly after filming, but before reshoots.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge... when I saw that in the producer's cut, I'd always assumed in the back of my mind that the reason that it's a non-ending that doesn't feature Pleasance visually is because he died before they got the footage in the can. That is not true.
Right.
They got the footage in the can, and then they completely changed their minds about what they wanted, but they didn't finish the reshoots, so they just accepted the fact that this is going to be a complete non-ending that ironically ends with a Donald Pleasance tribute card.
I know.
That begins the credits.
I know. That's one of my notes. I'm like, how dare you?
It's like,
that's
but
what
that's
I wrote
it.
Was, how dare you?
Yeah, but it's misleading because that implies, like, look, guys, we wanted to do an ending, but he died.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that says to me, which is not the truth at all.
Right.
And in the Taking Shape book, they even speculate. It's like someone on that production crew must have not liked Donald Pleasance because he was actively removed from the movie for no reason, because it's not like they had anything to replace it with.
That's crazy, though.
Yeah, it is crazy.
This guy that's been with you for 5 out of the 6 movies you've made so far, and one person is just stands up on their own and says, no, fuck that guy.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, it's just, and unsurprisingly, it's like the Weinstein saying, this is our version of the movie, and even we have to fuck over a dead guy, we'll do it.
Well, I think we know the lengths and that the Weinsteins will go.
Narcolepsy is one of the few things he hasn't been accused of, but
Christ.
cinematic narcolepsy, yes. So, you know, for all those reasons and more, the ending of the producer's cut makes it a far better movie. For the most part, I don't think it makes much of a difference which version you're watching until you get to the ending.
You might have turned me around on that. Yeah. I think it was gleeful for me because, I mean, look, this movie was made in 1995. I literally just watched this producer's cut this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, we're more than 25 years removed from the release, and so to see something new was a delight to me. Like I relished it. I really did.
And you know, the competency of decision making is the standard of that is much higher in the producer's cut.
Yeah.
Even down to putting the 6 back in the title.
Right.
And having an opening that isn't some god-awful mid-90s kind of grunge.
Yeah.
Shitty grunge and
grunge.
having like an actual Halloween style opening to the movie, and Dr. Loomis doing the voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, all those things that just that at a basic level of competence make sense. But you know, just as an entity, even the move, whichever movie they made, it's got a lot of problems.
Yes, that cannot be denied.
So we've still got to do. We've got a few business to do. We've got Mask Watch.
I was gonna say.
Okay, I'll let you lead Mask Watch.
I think this is the second best Mask in the series.
Okay.
Of the
My
of the sequels.
My notes aren't critical, but it struck me something about the way that the mask and the hair sit together made me think that the line between Michael Myers, the serial killer, and Mike Myers, the Canadian comedian, have somewhat blurred. Or have been as close as they'll ever get. And then, when it got bent a little, it really looked like Peter O'Toole for a second.
Well, I did not pick up on that.
And I also wanted to know, this is my third celebrity reference. For those of you who do not know, the Michael Myers mask is a converted
Shatner.
William Shatner mask.
Right.
And I thought at the end of this movie, the mask looks like what Shatner's face looks like now in modern day reality.
That's not nice.
Hey, I didn't choose to put all that surgery in his face. I didn't tell. Nobody pulled a gun to his head.
Oh shit.
Okay, that's a good Mask Watch. I guess we haven't. Well, Michael's barely in this movie in any significant way, but did you like how stumbly he was? Seems kind of like haphazard in a way he hasn't been before.
Well, I liked that, like especially at the end in the regular version, he's got a little pep in his step. He's moving quicker. And I kind of like that. And that's another moment of good filmmaking to me when they close.
He's got trash cans to empty.
When they close the bars, but he grabs Kara's hair, and then Tommy grabs that kind of dart gun, and like it's shot well, it's edited well. He brings the gun over, he puts it to his chest, he pulls the trigger, Michael falls down. All of that's really great. I mean, like it gets my heart pumping.
Oh, okay. I like that Kara gets some pummel time in on Michael. That's nice to see.
Right. And I've got a note here that Tommy hits him 20 times, over 20 times. It's like, it seems to me like maybe there was another transfer of power, but.
Yeah, true. At least in the theatrical version, there's no final scare.
No.
because there's no ending.
Because there's
to
no
the
ending.
movie.
Right. It's
So
just
you forgo the final
you got
scare
mask
as well.
and green goo with Donald Pleasance screaming.
And once you see the visual of that scream,
Yeah.
like I assumed it was like something, they just found a bit of audio footage from Halloween 5 of him going crazy. But when you see it, like, he's going for it. This screaming.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, did you understand what in the producer's cut what that was all about?
Not really. But upon reflection,
This movie continues to baffle in all its forms.
Upon reflection, it seemed to me that he had to become Dr. Wynn. That maybe that power was transferred to him.
Okay.
And now he's got to be in charge of Michael. There's that cut of Michael walking down the hall, and he kind of looks back, and he's like, see you soon, homie.
Yeah. What I liked about it is that even when you break it down, it makes as little sense as anything else in either version of the movie. But that there seemed like there was a causality to it.
Right. What I did like was it seemed like it chained Loomis to Michael Myers forever.
But then the tattoo disappears and then goes back to Michael.
Does it? I only saw it appear. It disappears too?
It disappears again.
It. Fuck.
So that's what really got me. I'm totally with you up to he becomes the new Win and he's Michael's, he's chained to Michael forever.
I don't remember the disappear.
It disappears again, and then we see Michael do a kind of Roger Moore style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
From behind. He does a kind of Roger Moore eyebrow raise as if I just got my tattoo back.
Yeah.
And because it disappears from Loomis.
Oh fuck!
And in the meantime, I don't know what direction he was given, but Donald Pleasance is screaming his life, literally screaming his life away because he will die soon after this. He dies soon after it.
Wow. All right.
Whew.
Anything left for you?
Just the briefest of credit checks.
Go ahead.
I've already talked about the title, the credit tribute to Donald Pleasance and how distasteful it is, as a view. The outro track to the theatrical version of the movie sounds so much like that fictional band that Adriana and the Sopranos managed.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Who I believe were called Visiting Day.
I don't remember.
Well, I'll sing a little bit of their song.
My last note, though, is, wow, what a 90s song to end on.
Yeah. So that the song from Visiting Day, this fictional band in the series The Sopranos, was called Defiler.
Oh, Jesus.
And it went, we know what we are, we know what we do, we're going to defile you, get out of my way, and don't be so gay. And that's all I could think of when I heard that song.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I didn't even have to think about it. It's like burned into my consciousness.
That's great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that we've discussed a lot. There's two versions of this fucking movie. Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, and Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. You got to tell us what you think. Have you seen that producer's cut? Which one do you like more? You let us know.
There's a bunch of other cuts as well, I realized.
Oh my god.
There's cuts that are like, a few minutes longer, a few minutes shorter, so I think this is a Blade Runner situation.
Wow, it's like 43 different versions. Yeah.
Probably a lot of it
All
is
right,
to do
ladies
with
and
violence.
gentlemen, you let us know. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Please send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, I am Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Stay tuned. We're going to pitch sequels to this mess. Say goodbye, Tom.
Not dead, just very much retired.
Good. That was the right choice. So long,
It's
everybody.
a better tribute than the one you get in the
It
movie.
really is. You're right.